Human beings are extremely fragile. Not as fragile as some of the other creatures on the planet, but fragile nonetheless. Humans are more hardened and protected than a hummingbird, but certainly lacking in the brute strength of a humpback whale. A moth can easily be brushed away. A human being can be also discarded, but it is usually not as easy or as unreflective as the wave of a hand. Unfortunately, there are exceptions to this observation. A spray of bullets from an automatic weapon, unfortunately, has repeatedly demonstrated this reality and truth. As fragile as we are, we seem quite capable of denying our fragility. It is amazing how so many people seem to live their lives without any reference to their fragile selves and vulnerable selves. If there is any awareness of fragility, it seems to be shielded from everyday experience, with attempts to cover it up or to make it less than obvious. Some people seem to project a strength, a feeling of being very much in control and having it all together. In reality, their fragility is in no way strengthened by this kind of behavior. It just makes it seem to be less operational. But all the while, the fragility persists. In spite of the ability to deny or to mask human fragility with a sense of bravado, experience has a way of inviting people to at least consider, if not accept, truths about themselves that they prefer not to dwell on or even ignore. Some experiences are so powerful that it's impossible to deny what has occurred. The experience invites reflection and perhaps even suggests a new way of thinking or living. There's no guarantee, however, that this will happen. It's also quite possible to retreat even more into a false sense of security and to live in denial. A quick and random listing of ordinary human experiences that invite reflection is illustrative of human fragility. Sickness, the loss of someone whom we love, the abrupt change in a relationship that is important to us, the unexpected fender bender that changes our driving plans for the foreseeable future, a well-placed criticism of something or someone that we value and care for, even an unexpected change in the weather that leaves us unprepared and forced to change plans. Each of these are examples of fragility. In addition to the events and experience that happen outside of ourselves, there are also the experiences that are within the depth of our being. Scrupulosity is one such example of human fragility. The disorder, seemingly silent but stealthful, nevertheless has the power to wreak real emotional havoc in the life of a person who suffers with the disorder. The emotional upheaval that a single, unwelcomed, but nonetheless intrusive and powerful thought can inflict on a person is remarkable. Even when the individual person is aware that they're not in control of their thoughts, and that all people experience thoughts that seemingly come out of nowhere. None of that seems to matter. The thought generates guilt or fear or anxiety or shame or remorse, an almost never-ending list of emotional responses and possibilities. Each experience revelatory of a deeper experience of fragility and vulnerability that is unwelcomed. Unfortunately, one of the learned lessons and behaviors that is not uncommon in the human family to any sign of fragility is the impulse to tough it out. There are a variety of reasons that human beings engage in order to encourage and perhaps even console ourselves for this posture. For some, it's the manly thing to do. For others, it's a sign of personal strength in the face of adversity. For others, it is the cross that we have been given to carry. If our struggle is a struggle that is rooted in mental illness, other reasons for endurance rather than fully addressing the issue are quite common. Chief among this other kind of reasoning is a basic distrust of therapy, a fear that acknowledging to another person a mental struggle will somehow mark you or tarnish your reputation. And then finally, there is the deep distrust that many people have for any kind of behavioral or cognitive or medical therapy that goes beyond an occasional aspirin. The consequences of addiction is often referenced as a good reason used in support of the reluctance. The inclination to deny what's being experienced and the inclination to try and just endure the experience is not only not helpful, but it also actually strengthens the disorder. Mental illness thrives on isolation. When the experience is religious scrupulosity, isolation from community and relationship is particularly paralyzing and ultimately deadly. Authentic spirituality and worship require relationship and community in order for any of the disciplines and practices to make any kind of sense. Sitting alone, isolated in your pew, in the darkness, and repeatedly engaging in specific and compulsive ritual expressions is not healthy religious expression. It is an indication of a disorder, often a serious medical disorder. It's certainly not expressive of a healthy spiritual practice. Amazingly, in the confused and disordered mind of the individual person who is suffering this disorder and who has become isolated in response to their suffering, there's often a false belief that to choose to become healthy might somehow displease God. As hard as it might be to comprehend, some people embrace the belief that to choose to break an unhealthy ritual is a sin. All this does is make the suffering even more intense and the isolation even more secure. It's not from God, nor is it a manifestation of the will of God. It is rather the disorder running free and unmanaged. The beginning step to engaging a healthy and integrative life in spirituality is not to try and manage everything that's marked by the disorder at once. This is a recipe for failure. It's just too overwhelming. A good place to start, and as good as it is not an easy place to start, is to embrace your fragility as it is experienced. The first step is to acknowledge and not to deny or try and lessen or somehow cover up that you are suffering. Acknowledging your fragility and the suffering that you are experiencing is not a denial of God or God's will for you. It is rather an acceptance of who you are as a human person. A second step that follows the first step, not immediately, but when the time seems to be opportune, is to seek the help of another person in your fragility and struggle. This is a significant decision to make and very important, because it is a decision to move you out of isolation and into a relationship. For the decision to have any real hope for success, it is essential that the choice for a person who might accompany you in the next steps of your journey to health be a person with whom you can establish a relationship of trust. Obviously, their particular skills and training are important, but even more essential and more important is that they are a person who is willing to accompany you, not lead you. They need to know the way, obviously. Otherwise, it would be the blind leading the blind. But it is more important that they are attuned to your needs, your fears and struggles through empathy, not through training or textbook mantras. Empathy is important because fundamentally, scrupulosity is rooted in feeling and emotion. It's not just an experience of perception, how you perceive or understand something. It's also very much about feeling and sensitivity. If it was something that could be managed through the accumulation of good information and cognitive understanding, more often than not, the person who is seeking help would have already discovered what they need. I state this because one of the experiences of scrupulosity is the constant questioning, researching, and almost superhuman effort to seek clarity and understanding. This is often the first step because it can be attempted alone, without the need of another person, or in other words, in isolation. It is of limited use and provides minuscule relief and understanding in proportion to the amount of time that has been dedicated to the effort. As it might be stated, the return on investment is unsatisfactory.